This is a tutorial for the two-sample t-test. So you would want to use this in your project if you collected your own quantitative data. So for example, if you were one of the students who did a survey on Facebook, so you would use the two-sample t-test when your dependent variable is an interval or ratio level, so a continuous level variable. You would use the chi-square test, which we have another video on, if this was a categorical variable. So to use the two-sample t-test, you need to have two groups. So for example, if your independent variable is, for example, gender, there's two groups, male and female, and if your dependent variable was categorical, so for example, say a Likert type scale, so on a scale of 1 to 4, how much do you agree with the following statement? This would be an example of when you would use the two-sample t-test. So you would see if there's a significant difference between the answers that the males gave and the answers that the females gave. So in order to do this two-sample t-test, we're going to need several, let me just delete these here, several different things. So you're going to first need the sample size for your two groups. So for example, say you had 50 males that answered your survey and 50 females that answered your survey. So the population 1 and population 2. You're also going to need the sample mean. So say you're doing the you're taking the mean of the of your Likert scale answers that range from 1 to 4. So what you would want to do here is you would add up all those answers for males, and say you added them up, divided them by 50, and your average answer was, say, 2.3. And if you do the same for females, you would add up all the females' answers, and maybe their average answer is 2.7. You also need the standard deviation for both these populations, for males and females. So you could use a standard deviation calculator. So I just went to calculator.net standard deviation, and what you would do here is you would add in all the answers for males and all the answers for females. So say there's 1.2, 4.0, and whatever your answers may be. This is just like an example here. And then you would calculate it. So our standard deviation would be about 1.2. So what the standard deviation tells you is how far these answers here are spread out from the mean. So how kind of close together they are, or how wide they are, how much variance there is here, or dispersion. So say we calculated the standard deviation for both our samples, and say that the males had a standard deviation of 1.2, and say the females had a standard deviation of 1.5. So this means that the females' answers were kind of more spread out than the males' answers. So once we do this, we get our p-value here, and the p-value is 0.144. So we're going to be using a p-value, a critical p-value of 0.05, which is a most common critical p-value used. So if our p-value is below 0.05, we would say that there is a significant difference. But since the p-value is higher than 0.05, we would say that there's no significant difference between males and females in how they answer on this Likert scale. Let's change this up a little bit and say that males were 1.9 and say females had like 3.6. So here we see the p-value changes and it's less than 0.001. So here we would say that there is a significant difference between males and females. So that's how you do a two-sample t-test.